All right. Thank you all for bearing with me this morning. A little bit of a rocky start, but we are ready to dive into the all staff meeting. Thank you all for being here. Just quickly to run through the agenda, we're going to start off with a client story, a fellow story from Elizabeth Daigle. I have some HR updates and reminders. Zach and Liz are going to talk to us about the 5-year strategy, really doing a deeper dive here. We'll also talk through our 2024 goals and scorecard, and the senior leadership team will be leading that. Fifth is key highlights. So 3 organizational updates to know from Thomas and Reese. And last but not least, shout outs. So with that, I'd invite Elizabeth to walk us through a client story, please.
Good morning, everyone. As most of y'all know, I am Elizabeth Daigle. I am the Disaster Recovery and Resilience Fellow in Southeast Louisiana, or also known as Terrebonne Parish and the Bayou region. So I'm going to go ahead and share a little story about something I have been working on in my area. As we know, long-term recovery, usually state-led and with government regulation, efforts are tedious, taking years to return survivors to their homes. Survivors are faced with barriers and fear, similar to what Ashley in the Bayou region of Louisiana experienced. Prior to Hurricane Ida, Ashley was a single working mother of 2 boys, ages 15 and 7, who resided in a double-wide mobile home in Golden Meadow, Louisiana. After Hurricane Ida passed, the family returned to a home that was close to being destroyed. The main door of the home, along with all of the windows on one side, had blown out, the roof had ripped off, and her electrical pole had snapped in half. She applied to FEMA and was not granted temporary housing and was awarded only $10,000 to repair her home. She used the $10,000 to fix the roof, broken windows, and electrical pole. She then had to gut majority of the home to rid it of mold and mildew. However, she did not have enough funding to replace the walls, ceiling tiles, and everything else in the home, or fix the front door. Therefore, she had to put up garbage bags and visqueen for makeshift walls and ceilings with the hope that she would be able to return to work and slowly repair her home. They have 2 pictures here that shows the home currently with the visqueen and garbage bags up. Then the unthinkable happened. Her 7-year-old son became extremely ill and was diagnosed with leukemia. Due to extended stays in the hospital, chemotherapy, and many doctor's appointments, Ashley has never been able to return to work. She applied for assistance with Restore, but was denied due to not being able to provide an electrical bill from August of 2021. As the home continued to deteriorate over the last 2.5 years since Ida, Ashley became fearful that someone would take her children away from her, and she was afraid to ask for assistance, all while living with the guilt that her home could make her son sicker. I had the privilege of meeting with Ashley in early December, and after hearing her story, I was able to refer her to Bayou Community Foundation and their Rebuild South Lafourche program. Within 2 weeks of completing her application, I was able to give Ashley the news right before Christmas that Storm Aid would be building her a new home, similar to which pictured here, at no cost to her. But the good news doesn't stop here. In March of 2023, I was able to bring House in a Box to Southeast Louisiana and secure funding for multiple partners. Due to this networking, Ashley will also receive House in a Box to provide her and her boys with new beds, bedding, couch, kitchen needs, you name it, she is getting it from House in a Box, except she would not get appliances. However, through more networking, she will receive new appliances through funding through Catholic Charities. The goal is to have Ashley and her boys in a safe and secure and completely furnished home by May of 2024. And here is a picture at a home of what her house will look like, or something similar to it. The Fellows Program allows for funding and grant opportunities from federal partners like Matt Success and Lake Charles, but it also creates opportunities like this one. where I was able to utilize multiple funding streams available to provide assistance to this family. The fellows are able to view problems from a holistic perspective and match clients with the right resources needed. Being a fellow has granted me the opportunity to work with multiple levels of government, multiple nonprofits, which allows me to understand all the funding sources, prioritize needs for private funding, and at the end of the day, gain the trust of my community and my neighbors to help steer them through turbulence. Ashley will now have a resilient home by summer, giving her child the opportunity to recover safely and also her family to be less impacted by future disasters. Thank you so much for y'all listening to my story.
Fantastic, Elizabeth. If that is not a testament to how critical our DRL Fellows program is, I mean, oh my gosh, amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. And a hard act to follow, might I add. So here are some HR updates, but very important stuff here as well. We'll start with the more minor stuff. President's Day is on February 19th. For those of us in Louisiana, we don't have President's Day off. And Puerto Rico, sorry, you do not either. But everyone else does to maintain fairness for the number of holidays that all staff members have off. For Louisiana, we do have Mardi Gras off. And sorry, I'm not sure how it is the 13th, I think. 13th, anybody know? Oh gosh, 13th, thank you. I think someone corrected my 18th here, but yes, it is the 13th. So we will have that off. So some things to note, SMART goals. So today we're going to be talking about our organizational scorecard for 2024, and our senior leaders are going to be walking us through what those kind of overarching organizational goals are. However, we also need to distill those down, and everybody across the organization needs personal SMART goals to work on this year that tie into our accomplishing our organizational goals. I'm asking that we have those submitted in Paylocity. For those of y'all who have not experienced it before, we do track those goals in Paylocity. I have a couple videos from last year that I'm going to share with the team, and also hold a workshop for any supervisors who want to participate and learn how we put SMART goals into Paylocity. Second is thank you to everyone for your patience with the tech projects that we've been working on. So depreciating Okta, getting rid of Okta and using Google SSO. There is a lot more than that I won't go into right now, but just thank you for your patience. I know it's a lot. And for those of y'all whose work was interrupted for a short period of time, thanks for your patience. What comes next with the tech stuff? So developing standard operating procedures and training to make sure that we don't lose traction on some of the changes that we've implemented. If anyone has had any challenges or continued challenges with any of the tech pieces, please let me know so we can work through those. And then the third thing that I wanted to talk about, and we mentioned this a few times on Monday's team call, but we just wanted to remind everyone about the day off per month for volunteerism for both staff and AmeriCorps members. For staff, you just have to let your supervisor know at least 10 days in advance, or work with them on what works best as far as notification. But you're allowed to go volunteer for a day, and that's paid time off to make your community better. So please take advantage of that. And then a couple upcoming events, initiatives, and opportunities. So policy updates. As y'all are aware, we have added a 10-year piece into the time off or vacation policy. So for every full year that someone is employed with the organization, you'll receive an additional 4 hours of vacation time. And so that accrues across with your standard vacation time across the pay periods in the year. And then also, Courtney has been working really hard on finalizing an updated employee handbook. So we have lots of people now who work remotely in different states that we haven't been previously in. And so our new handbook, I expect to be out in about 2 weeks is the published date that we have anticipated. So please be on the lookout for more communication around that. And then wanted to forecast or just let the team know about sunsetting in Houston and in the Bahamas. I think most of the team here is aware. And also Puerto Rico. However, with Puerto Rico, we are still very much looking for alternate or continued work and funding in Puerto Rico. So more to come on that. But thank you to everyone in Houston and the Bahamas. I know that your work there has been instrumental, and it's hard to sunset, but it means that we've done everything we can in that community to help them recover, at least from a rebuilding perspective. So thank you deeply. And then finally, last but not least, we are scheduling an active shooter training in New Orleans and the headquarters, so New Orleans operating site and headquarters. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a while. It is a piece of just overall team safety. And so we'll be looking to other sites to provide the same type of training, but wanted to test pilot in New Orleans first. So just giving everybody a heads up. All right, so with that, I want to move on to the 5-year strategic plan. So I believe Zach and Liz, I will invite you to walk us through the plan.
Terrific work, Kyle. Elizabeth, thank you for so fulsomely embracing the mom rule. And thanks to everybody for so fulsomely embracing the mom rule and SPP's other values to benefit the clients and communities we love and serve. And so many of you are in some ways familiar with the 5-year strategic plan. We launched it a year and a half ago. I'm really thrilled to report that we're largely on track, and that's because of the hard work that you and your colleagues are doing every day. We wrapped up in the late fall, early winter an engagement with bridge span. So first we had to know where we were going. We then made the investment to learn what internal capacity and structures we need, and really how to organize, gather the resources to better execute on the plan. And then we're going to be putting those in place Q1, Q2, and through 2024. So this is our plan. It's our SPP. It's your SPP. It's your plan. It's our plan. And so we're going to walk through it a little bit. There will be further sessions, deep dives. We need everybody fluent in this, understanding it. It's really the why behind the priorities and the way we go about our work. And really, there's no better place to start than SPP's values that you all embrace so beautifully every day. And I want to walk through just kind of 2 themes here. We still exist to reduce the time between disaster and recovery because people are at risk of being pushed beyond their breaking point. But there's a theory to how we go about doing that. The theory is this: the doing work, where SPP was started, and for so many of you, it's where you started and we're still doing today. The doing work, the rebuilding, the RAF, the FEMA appeals, that doing work informs, drives, and indeed requires the next thing, the scaled impact work. We're doing it, but while doing that work, we're seeing what doesn't work. Unfortunately, we're witnessing systems that are failing people and causing people to be pushed beyond the breaking point. So we got to scale the impact. And that's largely through partnerships, innovations, and sharing what we learn, helping folks to prepare. We got to scale impact. And then finally, moving to the right, we got to change the system, because we don't always want nonprofit groups and SPP to be there doing the work. We want the systems at the end of the day to work better. And so as we're doing that, the doing work informs, drives, and requires the scaled impact that then begets the system change work. All the values are important, but I think it's important to highlight 3 to start. First of all, the mom role. It's what brings you to SPP and drives your work every day. We go about the work the way we'd want it done if it related to our own loved ones. But that includes, if our loved ones were on the waiting list, we wouldn't care who's doing the work. We just want it done for people. So the mom rule is the pathway into the scaled impact, because we've got to treat our clients and people who are at risk of being pushed beyond their breaking point like our own loved ones. We've got to scale the impact. And the way we scale the impact is by being curious connectors, understanding opportunities, listening to our clients, understanding what's not working, and sharing, connecting with other partners, both in the government and outside the government, philanthropically and programmatically. And then from the Curious connectors, we move to the system change, making the system work better. And that's where steering through turbulence comes in. Doing things differently, causing system change, is bound to cause some bumps. Things have been going the way they have for an awfully long time. It benefits some people, it benefits institutional actors. Change is hard. Change isn't an indictment of the past, but instead a belief in clients for the future. There are going to be bumps. And I know that in doing so, sometimes the bumps mean we're on the right path if we're getting pushback for some institutional actors. We can't alienate them. We've got to be hearable, but there will be bumps. So I just wanted to frame where we're going with SBP values to really have you all unleash your terrific capacity. We can go to the next slide. And so working with Bridgespan just got us some data. We all know it, right? We know disasters are becoming more frequent, stronger, hitting parts of the country that they haven't hit before, but Bridgespan helped us put some data around it that's humanizing and pretty darn painful. At the least, this is low end conservative. There's 26 million low-income homeowners who live in communities that are at grave risk, like urgent grave risk of being severely impacted by disasters. Most of them are not in mandatory flood zones. It seems like about 500,000 families are having their homes severely impacted each year. And so the systems have to change. We've got to get to scale. The systems have to change. And unfortunately, I mean, you know it as well as anyone, the system isn't ready to address this, and there's an equity and a racial equity problem as well. The truth is, and the facts show it, that many of the federal funds, the federal system, first of all, is and has been for an awfully long time disadvantaging certain communities and communities of color. The funds are structurally harder to get in communities of color, both the resilience and the recovery dollars. And the result of this is traumatic and generation impacting for families who stare into an abyss of uncertainty and don't have a clear path to recovering. And rural communities and communities of color are acutely failed, and the systemic inequities are compounded with a real and profound human impact. Our work, your work, is incredibly important. We can go to the next slide. Thankfully, however, momentum is changing. And it's the royal we, the country, is in somewhat of a better position. Funds federally are starting to come. However, SBP and the work that you're doing is needed to make sure those dollars get to the right communities and that they're used efficiently. It would be the biggest failure in the world if there's more federal money out there and it still doesn't change anything for the communities who deserve it the most. So more money is coming federally. Philanthropy, both corporate and private, is paying more attention to climate change, more attention to racial equity. But what's really needed is the knowing intermediaries and catalysts who can both do the work and build coalitions to drive equitably the system change that is needed. So we go to the next slide and we'll do this one pretty quick. Thank you. So the strategic plan has been refined. The mission is refined to shrink the time between disaster and recovery. We all know that it's to prevent people from being pushed beyond their breaking point, but we have a vision, a future state, an aspirational future state that will work for people. And it's that communities in the US and Caribbean are fortified against disaster so that the people most at risk of losing their homes and all that comes with it can instead thrive through resilient homes and resilient communities. And the work that you do at SBP is directly, fundamentally tied to that. You can go to my last slide. And so I'm just going to pause for a sec, have you read. I'll briefly go through this. So as you see, we reduced the time between disaster and recovery, but it methodically works its way through the direct service work, generates information, shares innovations that get to the scaled impact, which lead to collaborations with the government, with philanthropy, importantly with other nonprofit organizations, that then proves up at scale what works, so addressing scale, that then leads to change and improved federal policy, funding, getting to the communities that need them the most. So at this point, I'll pass it on to Liz. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach, and good morning, everybody. Really appreciate you taking some time out to join this call, learn a little bit more about the strategic plan. And as Zach said, we're going to be hosting listening sessions in the coming weeks and months, and really encourage you after this call and after you review this deck to participate in those if you have questions or curiosities or just want to kind of dig in a little bit more to more deeply understand. So Zach talked about our direct service, scaled impact, and systems change work. It's all really important. One of the, I think, greatest benefits of this engagement with Bridgespan was that they taught us the importance of prioritization. Some of you might be thinking, wait a minute, I've been saying that we need to prioritize for a long time, long before Bridgespan arrived on the scene. Well, the good news is that not only did we become more aware of it, but Bridgespan really taught us how to prioritize. And so with their support and a lot of investment and thinking from the steering committee, which was comprised of people on the staff, we came up with these 3 buckets: steady state, big bets, and learning agenda. And I just want to take a minute to unpack what each of those means, because all of our work is important. Everybody on this call is doing work that's impacting people day in and day out. But we also need to understand where and how we want to make investments as an organization. So steady state programs are things that we've been doing for some time, and candidly, we do pretty darn well. So there are 2 examples of those here: build and advocate. We're going to continue building because we know that people need support after a disaster. Families like Miss Ashley's in Terrebonne Parish who really struggle and fall through the cracks. We also know that we've got to continue to share our voice and advocate for change, and we're going to keep doing that. And we have planned growth for steady state programs. Big bets are a little bit different. We're also planning growth in these programs. So specifically, I'm talking about the Recovery Acceleration Fund, the Disaster Assistance Program, and all of the work that these advised programs doing, from training government leaders to bringing resilience and recovery fellows to communities. All this work is planned to grow. What we do think could happen, though, is that there could be some sort of game-changing interest and investment in these programs that will cause them to grow at a significantly greater rate than we're currently sort of planning for. So it's exciting because I think there's a lot of enthusiasm about these programs, and people see how this work really can create systems change. And then the last bucket of programs, equally as important, are programs that we call in the learning agenda phase. So for example, in SHARE, we're going to continue to invest in other NGOs. We're going to provide training, AmeriCorps members, and the work that we've been doing for some years. At the same time, we're going to start exploring field building, which means we're going to try to create a coalition of the willing, of people who see that in the sector, there's an opportunity for all of us not only to do better, but to bring our collective voices together to really cause some large scale change, some systems change that needs to happen. And we want to help elevate those voices in communities that have really been underrepresented, so that we're not going at it alone, but instead bringing folks together, learning from each other, and then bringing our ideas to bear so that we can make the changes that are really needed. And also in Learning Agenda is the Prepare program. This is a program that's really critical to our work. The more that we can prepare people, the less impact they'll have from disasters, and the better prepared they'll be for the future. And I think there's an opportunity as we continue to train and survey people through the Prepare program to really more deeply understand what are the barriers, both to preparedness and to insurance, and then how do we go about helping people navigate around those. So with that, can we hop over to the next slide? So at the end of the 5-year plan, we're going to achieve a lot, y'all. You can see here that we're going to rebuild over 3,000 homes. We're going to file more than 4,000 FEMA appeals. We're going to preserve $500 million worth of equity. This is significant. And then at the same time, really thinking about, as we scale our impact, the kind of broad reaching effectiveness that SBP and our partners will have. Thinking about things like $200 million worth of resilience and mitigation money in low capacity communities. That's awesome. Helping to over 30 million people understand and prepare for disaster while also learning from them. This is really exciting and large scale work. And so I think as we think about the interplay between the programs and as that interplay increases, we're going to achieve more and more results with less and less friction. So it's an exciting time at SBP, and we're super glad to have all of you on the team. And I just want to hop to the next slide real quick. And Zach touched on this at the very beginning, because I think there's something else that we need to know. In order to do all of this, we have to make some changes at the organization. And so when SBP started, and for many years, we have been a group that maybe has always been innovative, but kind of maybe a little bit scrappy and startup, and all hands on deck. And as we look towards achieving these goals, we've got to pivot a little bit, or maybe a lot, yes, and have greater coordination and alignment of our programs. We've really got to deepen the functional expertise at SBP in a lot of the really critical functions like human resources, marketing, technology.
I realized it.
Hey, Vanessa, thank you. Sorry to call you out. You were just off mute there. We also need to really transform the way that we talk about success. And so instead of just talking about people served and dollars raised, continuing to do that and also thinking about what are the important lessons that we're learning? How are we building capacities? And how are we influencing leaders and institutions? And then lastly, changing from a board of directors that's involved with individual leaders to a board of directors and a national advisory group, which we will be forming, that is thinking about high-level strategy and external trends. And so with that, I'd like to hop to the next slide and maybe talk about how all of that is influencing what we're doing this year in 2024. So this slide should look really familiar to all of you. We've talked about our goals scorecard, but hopefully with some broader context about where SBP is going and why. This maybe helps us all understand why all of the really critical goals that each department is driving towards are connected to this large scale impact that we're all aiming toward. So I think now would be a good time for me to hand it off to Thomas, who is going to walk us through build goals.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, folks. I'm going to walk you through what we're aiming at in 2024 for the build intervention. I'll recite what's on the slide here and then provide a little bit of kind of like added color and context. So our target is to rebuild 353 homes through our OOR program, which is inclusive of our target of 105 through the Recovery Acceleration Fund program running out of Lakeland in Florida. We also want to realize a 30% gross margin on the completed RAF homes. If you're asking yourself, what's a gross margin? I think it's disgusting, but you should talk to Steve about it. Generally, what we want to see is from our cost to what we net from the program, like that, we want to see that margin for each of our projects. So Steve and the team will be tracking towards that. Additionally, 25 million in home equity preserved through our OOR work. So the value of that property, what otherwise would be lost if it were not reconstructed and sustained, that's what would be lost. We want to preserve that for our homeowners. Realized 4,200 volunteer instances. I don't know what's going on over there. Anyways, I'm going to keep going. 4,200 volunteer instances with a net promoter score of 4.5 or greater. To touch on the Opportunity Housing Program, the goal is to sell 6 homes and then secure funding for 2 new OH projects and achieve a vacancy rate of 7% or less across SVP's rental portfolio. And then additionally, we want to see 75% of owner-occupied projects, RAF projects, OH projects leverage SVP's Resilience and Sustainability Kit. If you're not familiar, this is really the brainchild and informed by both Dulcie and then Cam out in the Bahamas, and a lot of the work that we've done. But it is the package of resilient and sustainable build tactics that we deploy across our build projects. So that's inclusive of fortified roofs to using recycled or shingles with recycled content. The New Orleans team has done a bunch with Blue Jean insulation and leveraging that as well as PVC cabinets. So anyways, we're aiming to have 75% of our projects leverage that. To just quickly, before I pass this over to Liz to speak to additional goals, I just want to add a couple of other points on the build program at large for 2024. So first, like, this is the floor. Like, what we've put forward here is informed by resources secured and our vision and level of confidence for what we can produce through our build program and OH program throughout 2024. But it doesn't represent the ceiling. Without a doubt, we've seen operating sites scale. Some are approaching that sunset moment. As you heard Zach say, the build program has identified and kind of piloted a bunch of stuff that now has been matured thanks to leadership across SVP. So the Recovery Acceleration Fund, right? Like, it was maybe 5 years ago where Mike and Steve and Angela and Megan and I were working in
New Jersey. Is that what he was going to say?
I believe so. Thomas, if you can hear us, your audio is cutting out and your
the development of the Recovery Acceleration Fund with Hannah's leadership and a number of other folks in Lake Charles after Laura and Delta. What it is that we do in build, as Zach said, and just to amplify it, I think identifies the parts of the system, the disaster recovery system, the life cycle of a disaster and how it affects communities and homeowners. It identifies those points upstream and downstream that require intervention and investment. And so while what we're representing here is kind of the floor of what build can do, it's not the ceiling. And for us to continue to authenticate ourselves and identify the parts of the system that need change and investment and curing, build needs to continue to grow. And so I'm excited to see this develop, to be a part of this development. And as we are moving in that direction, I want to acknowledge that we're standing on the shoulders of many, many individuals that have come before us to establish the build program. And the next time that we all come together as a staff team, there are going to be a few people that are on this call today that won't be there. So I know there's a shout out section in a few more slides, but just to put it forward, I really want to acknowledge Javier in Puerto Rico, Viv in Puerto Rico, Bruce and Vanessa that are out in Houston, and then Hannah here in New Orleans. All of these team members in their own way have loved on their community and invested themselves not only in delivering on build, but challenging the build program, the build intervention to be better than it was. And so I just want to specifically call these individuals out who have been such a part of the DNA of build and are moving forward because of changes in program side or opportunity, and just publicly thank them for how they've invested in build. So with that, let me be quiet and pass it over to Liz, who will drive us through the next set of interventions.
Great, thanks, Thomas. Really appreciate it. And huge thanks to the team members who will be moving on. We appreciate all that you've done and contributed. You will be missed. I want to talk a little bit about Prepare. So this year we're going to be focusing on continuing to reach audiences, but do it a little bit differently. The Prepare team is focused not only on reaching people through trainings, both in person and virtually, through digital engagements, and through in-person events, but also thinking about how do we measure the impact of those engagements? How do we start to determine, are we changing people's behavior? Are they going to be doing things a little bit differently? So with that, we're also going to be surveying participants in SBP's trainings to understand some of the real barriers that they have. In addition to, was the training helpful? What did they learn? What did they get out of it? So that this program, which I mentioned earlier, is in sort of the learning agenda bucket, can continue to understand what the needs are and how to position this program sort of optimally meet people where they are and help them be better prepared and mitigate risk in the event of a future disaster. The second thing I want to highlight is the SHARE team goals. We're going to be raising money, and we are going to be investing in local nonprofit organizations that are involved in recovery in their communities. You can see that we're going to be investing just shy of $4 million this year, which is really significant. And I'm excited for that team to not only bring resources to those NGOs, but to learn from them, to help elevate their voices through our field building work, and to really test and try this hypothesis that we have that there are many NGOs, community-based organizations, and philanthropic entities who see that there is a need for all of us to do this work better and want to be engaged in the work in ways that are just outside of just their community and what they're doing and what's in front of them. So I'm looking forward to learning from Angela and Mackenzie as this program grows, and then having an opportunity to report back to the team. The disaster assistance program team, shout out to you all, will be busy this year. They're going to file 1,200 FEMA appeals for survivors. Last year, they filed 813, which is amazing, and helped to put over $2 million into survivors' pockets. They're going to continue to do that important work and then share that data with Reese as he continues to push FEMA to think about how do they tweak and refine their programs to better meet people where they are and ensure that they don't have to wait and ideally never have to appeal for additional support in the first place. So thank you, DAP team. And then lastly, I want to highlight the work that the development team will be doing this year. As you can see at the bottom of this slide, they have some ambitious goals, and I have full faith and confidence that they will be able to achieve these. So we're talking about just over $16 million in corporate foundation grants, over $2.5 million in individual donations. Those come to SBP through things like the year-end campaign. So huge thanks to everybody who helped to promote that campaign. It was a big success. The team raised over, I don't have the most recent numbers, but last I heard it was around $750,000. So thank you all for participating in that and promoting that. And then lastly, thinking about not just what we need to raise in this year, but also what we need to raise in future years. And so the team will also be focusing on sort of multi-year grants and pledges that will allow us to continue our work and continue to grow into future years. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Reese to talk about advise and advocate.
Thanks, Liz. What an exciting year. I'm excited to be with you all, to see your faces, and to share a little bit more about the advise and advocate goals, but really also the genesis of the work that we do here. At the risk of maybe making the point too many times, Zach talked earlier about how our building work drives what we know about the world. It drives our systems change impact. And it's so true because before there was advise and advocate, there was just build. And in each place we set up a new operation and built 100 homes, we would see a state or a local government receive 10 or 100 times more money to rebuild homes for the same families that we were rebuilding for. And then we'd watch those same governments struggle for years, if ever, to deliver predictable assistance to survivors who really needed it. And so we knew as a root cause analysis, TPS kind of organization, we had to start asking, why don't these things work? And the more we asked, the more we found the central role that government plays in the lived experience of low to moderate income individuals. Before, during, and after disasters, they rely critically on government agencies for information, before disasters on guidance for what to do in the immediate aftermath, and on long-term resources that are made available for those communities to recover and rebuild. When we look around the country, we see state and local operators are failing to mount effective recovery and resilience programs more than half the time. And to Zach's earlier point that some people are doing just fine in the system as it currently exists, we are watching a niche market of for-profit consultants get very rich, providing bespoke advice to small governments who've never operated big grants like this before. In the background of these lessons we've been learning for the past 5 or 8 years, we also federal government making massive investments in local and state resilience and mitigation programs now through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS and Science, the most recent consolidated appropriations. There's trillions of dollars that are flowing through various agencies to state and local governments to implement resilience and mitigation programs. But we know, based on what we've seen in markets all across the country, that without those kind of catalysts that Zach mentioned earlier, without good advisors that can help local governments figure out how to access these newly minted resources, without advocates who are paying attention to the small ball details that affect the low-income communities that we care so much about, without advise and advocate, we can't focus on those systems change. But importantly, without the work of build and share, we wouldn't even know what those changes are. So I'm thrilled to help lead us to the goals you see here. We're going to continue pushing FEMA to simplify the application and inspection process so that survivors don't need to go through the DAP program to receive all the assistance they're due. They can get that the first time they apply in a much easier way. We're going to create a coalition of other actors to support important legislative and regulatory initiatives that SBP puts forward at the state and federal level. We'll continue advising state and local government leaders that are operating these programs so that they do it more successfully. And we know that providing government leaders with a baseline training and understanding of programs is crucial. So we'll continue to offer our trainings as a way to meet SBP and learn how we can help you or your community do similar resilience and mitigation programs. I'll talk a little bit in a minute about the 10 to 30 recovery fellows. This is one of those big bets that could take off in a really exciting way. But this is SBP's direct effort to help small to medium-sized communities access the trillions of dollars in resources that I mentioned earlier. We know by looking around the country that without help, small to medium-sized communities rarely access assistance that's made available by the federal government. And so in this once-in-a-generation opportunity, we're paying it forward by placing fellows in partnership with many incredible funders in communities all across the country to better position those communities to access those resources and then share with their friends and neighbors the most successful tactics for accessing them so that we can see that spread more fruitfully across the country. I think that 2024 is going to be SBP's biggest year yet, due largely to the work that each of you are engaged in every day. So if ever there's more or different I can tell you about the work of Advise and Advocate, I hope you'll call on me. And I hope that you'll look for opportunities to feel and experience the way the work that you're doing each day is driving the work that we are doing each day. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to the new year. With that, I think I hand it back to Liz. I'm sorry.
I think I'm up next.
Oh, thanks, Keith.
Can everyone hear me? Okay. Well, thanks, Reese. And I feel fortunate to follow the group that you just heard from, who highlighted obviously all the amazing program initiatives that we've got planned for 2024. And to that end, our finance team, along with each of you, will help to kind of drive the bottom line and to see a positive change of $2.6 million next year. So looking at the bottom right of that slide, obviously that is up from the current year. The current year we saw about a $500,000 loss, which generally is in line with budget. So, but more importantly, this positive change that I've mentioned, 2.6 million, is not only going to support each of the program goals that you saw or that you've heard previously, but it's also going to position us to do more in 2025. Now, I mentioned that each of you plays a part. You do. Every expense you incur, every scope of work you negotiate or contract you review, you can benefit the organization directly by asking for some pricing concessions or reductions. And I'm glad to say in 2023, we did that. We saw nearly $1 million in documented savings. For 2024, we're going to kind of level set that a little bit, $600,000, as I expect the easy kind of quick wins, if you will, were already addressed, but we'll need to keep going. So I appreciate all the efforts the collective group made, and every good organization has to look and evaluate contracts, and are we getting the right use out of the services we're paying for or the contractors we might be working with. Lastly, I'll shift over to the technology side, where we're going to continue to invest in Salesforce. Brittany, our Salesforce senior leader, Joe, who's I'm happy to announce is a new Salesforce admin we just hired, who's set to start later this month, along with Kristen, who leads our project management office, are all focused on trying to define what this next phase of Salesforce improvement is. In the coming weeks, we're going to partner with each of your departments to understand what's working well today, what's not, how can we improve both the function, usage, and data quality of the program today, or at least the technology today. What we wish for, what we dream for more than anything, is not just it being the system of record that it is today, but that it is so instrumental in your ops needs that it's one of the first programs you open every morning. And I'm confident we can get there. We've obviously seen so much improvement over the last year, but we need to keep on going. So with that, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth Wright.
Thank you, Keith. And thanks, colleagues, for the opportunity to talk to you today about some of SBP's big picture goals for communications and marketing in 2024. I'll start by saying everything we do in communications and marketing intends to enable the wider SBP strategic plan that Zach, Liz, and others just highlighted. So we are one of the functions in the organization whose purpose is to operationalize that strategy. So before I share the goal, I just want to share some context about our top priorities in comms and marketing that then explains why did we arrive at this goal. I've said these before, but they bear repeating. They're like our mantra in comms. So first of all, our top priorities are to position SBP as a national thought and practice leader in disaster recovery and resilience. Second goal is to increase our base of supporters and increase our brand recognition among the stakeholders whose support we need to succeed. And then lastly, we want to amplify and elevate our innovations and solutions in order to influence a new vision for disaster recovery and resilience. We want to engender more belief in what we do by amplifying our contributions and our evidence. And as Reese has said, and others have said, large-scale change in this sector is a team sport. We need partners, we need supporters, we need donors. And in order to get those, they need to know what we do. They need to know the value of it, and they need to believe in us as a partner. So to get there, to achieve these goals and priorities, we have to start by building a really strong foundation and culture of communications in SBP. And so that's why one of our top goals in 2024, as listed there, is to develop a brand identity and narrative in alignment with the vision and value proposition asserted in our larger strategic plan. So we need to develop a bold, compelling, differentiated brand identity and brand narrative that both defines us in very, very simple, boiled down essential terms in plain English, and more importantly, that inspires support. So I just want to pause quickly and not take up too much more time, but say, when people start talking about brand, a lot of times you start hearing this insider marketing mumbo jumbo kind of business speak. So I just wanted to kind of back that up a little bit and explain what a brand is and why it's important. It is what you intend people to think about you when they hear your name. It's the intentional core thought and emotional anchor that your brand intentionally triggers to generate recognition and belief. in your target audiences. So in short, I say brand is the reason and fundraising is the result. Brand is the source of trust and fundraising is the source of revenue. And why do we want to brand in the first place? It is in order to have a more powerful impact on disaster recovery and resilience, to have a stronger voice to better influence decision makers and funders, and to encourage more people to believe in our new vision for disaster recovery and resilience. So I will stop there. We have more goals than this. And I have probably just like 20 seconds left, but I want to encapsulate with a story. People love to tell stories. So to really bring what a brand is to life, I want to share an example from Pfizer. In 2021, they did a global rebrand for the first time in about 50 years, at a point of really ambitious transformation in the company's history. This is at the height of the pandemic. The purpose of their rebrand was to reclaim their role as a trailblazing scientific researcher, not only as a company that was mostly concerned with commerce and treating different diseases and making products like Advil and Viagra, those that were their biggest money makers and their biggest focus, to innovative science leaders developing vaccines for the public good. So they undertook this brand transformation, and it involved a visual rebrand and a verbal rebrand, a narrative. And some outputs of that were messaging platforms that became campaigns that you may have seen and are familiar with, but I think they are some of the most standout rebrand messages I've seen in a long time. So one of them was Pfizer making the impossible possible. Another was world shaping science. And the last one, which is now their brand tagline, is science will win. So I'm just calling those out because when you hear the name Pfizer, you have associations immediately that are intentional on their part if they've done their brand well. And hopefully the associations you have summon some of those qualities about science, leadership, and innovation, and making the impossible possible. It's not literal. They're not going into all of the things they do and how they do it, but it is this core thought and emotional anchor that do those things I mentioned that define them and inspire belief and support. So that's where I hope we will go with SBP's brand in 2024.
Amazing, Elizabeth. Thank you. And a hard act to follow again. Dang. So 2024 people goals. We have a lot of great stuff. I'm really excited about our upcoming year with the people team. So some goals to note. One is to promote a more inclusive workspace by increasing diversity across our employees to 40%, while also looking at the levels of diversity within our organization. The second is around management development. So we're going to develop a program that strengthens our management development initiatives and focused on empowering managers to provide consistent and timely feedback, where 90% of our performance reviews are conducted on time, and individual performance IDPs, so individual development programs or plans are included with each annual performance review. So what does that mean? Annual performance reviews will have employee development and growth in mind when we are delivering feedback for employee reviews. Additionally, increase retention by 10% over last year for staff. And then a little bit about AmeriCorps. So 85% retention is our goal for our grant years. Also enrolling 100% of our allocated MSY in this new grant year. Back to staff, reduce time to hire by 15%. And then last but not least, and this one is, I think, really, well, I know it's really important, implement a semi-annual engagement survey where we have at least 80% participation from our staff team. And also that we're achieving a net promoter score of 4 out of 5 or higher. So lots to come this year. I know that that's not as thrilling as it sounded. It's less thrilling sounding than what it is going to be, pardon me. But really looking forward to another year of service to y'all. The HR/people team is a service function, and we're here to serve you. So excited for 2024. With that, I believe we are on to Thomas and Reese with some key highlights.
Thanks, Kyle. Hey, folks, me again. I want to just run through two things here, Florida expansion and then some updates on AmeriCorps at SVP. So Florida expansion. I'll start in kind of two places. So one, there's this like really funny episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't know if anybody watches, but it's like in the first season where effectively like the precinct like team gets really close to like closing a case, and then this character comes in like at the end, like on a high note, and like takes the case, like takes the credit. Anytime I talk about anything that Steve Doolin is doing, I feel very uncomfortable because the magic and the impact of Steve and the programs that he affects is overwhelming, and I don't feel it appropriate to represent anything that Steve is doing. I think that Steve should be representing it all. But I with that said, and with that acknowledgement of Steve's professional impact, I want to talk about some of what Steve is doing and Steve's team is doing, and then ultimately what we're looking at in Florida. So you've heard the Florida Recovery Acceleration Fund. It's established. We have staff. I'm so excited that some of the new hire we've brought in, specifically in Varouche, who's leading our client services, but then we've also been able to retain and reassign a number of SBP people, a couple from New Orleans, and Sam and Grace from Florida, Angelina. We've got Brian from Southwest. We've got Alex from Florida. Like it's an amazingly strong team of individuals with institutional and outside experience that's going to help us build towards that goal of 105 this year. And so we're going to see this scale up of our Recovery Acceleration Fund and the build projects that we're producing through that under Steve's leadership. In the same moment that we're scaling that program in Florida and the impact there, we're aware, I think we all are aware that Pamela is moving into pre-planned retirement at the end of this month. And so, I've worked with Pamela for the better part of 5 years here, and she's leaving massive shoes to fill, no doubt. And we're also at this point where there are a couple of critical programs in Florida, our shelter in place program, as well as the philanthropic work we have resulting from Ian, supported by Red Cross and CDP. There's a bunch of work to do. We have close to $3 million worth of work just to do on that side of programming, informed by Ian and Idalia. And then also we've got Jill and Steven holding it down in Bay County and Panama City. That's doing an absurd amount of work and networking for our government programs informed by Bay County and Panama City. So we have all this work to do. With Pamela's absence, it's provided this opportunity for us to, again, reassign a number of SBP people to help us push through these next 6 months to deliver on Shark, to deliver on Red Cross, CDP, Ian work, and maintain our reputation and presence across the state. So I just want to describe what that looks like. First, Jill and Steven that are based in Panama City, Bay County, are going to continue to support all things Florida, but really hug our Bay County and Panama City work. This is an operation that, frankly, y'all, we thought might sunset 18 months ago, and they have been able to continue to develop relationship, grants, and funding opportunities to sustain our programming. And so we're going to see that in our Bay County, Panama City, Florida operation. Meanwhile, I am overwhelmed with excitement, which sounds muted as I say it, but I'm truly overwhelmed that we've been able to negotiate with a few other people who are going to come through and help us carry the torch in Florida. So specifically, Cam and Dara that have been based in the Bahamas have agreed to come to Florida for 6 months to work with Steve, to work with the team, to focus on Shark, our Ian and Idalia work, and to ensure that construction and productivity continues there with these time-bound commitments through the Shark program and with our funders. So we've been able to recruit them in. Additionally, Leanne, who has been based in Houston, is going to come on board to be a program administrator and working with Steve to further bind and be the glue for all of this programming. As I said, there are big shoes to fill as Pamela is transitioning, but I am without doubt, without hesitation, fully confident that with this team of individuals and with Steve lending further leadership and vision for the state, we're not only going to realize amazing things based on what we've committed to, but also The development team has worked so hard to get Red Cross and CDP to be an entity that's willing to fund SBP directly, and they're doing it now. And so what we're also going to do in this season is show CDP and show Red Cross that SBP is the partner that they want to connect with early on post-disaster to fund, to establish build programs, to share, to make impact. And so not only are we going to deliver a whole bunch of millions of dollars of good work for the state of Florida, but we're also going to continue to build our reputation and our relationship with these institutional funders that's only going to seed further growth and impact in SBP. So I know that's a lot, but you should look to Florida as really a state where you're going to see build and other interventions continue to develop and grow and make impact. So look for that. Please, like, to the extent you have relationships or connections, like, connect with Cam and Dara, Leanne, Jill, Steven, as well as Steve and our RAF team, and just, connect with them and make yourself available if they need support as they're moving into this scaled production. So that's a little bit on Florida. Second, we are acknowledging that as SBP's kind of work continues to evolve and mature, that there maintains opportunities for us to further nest AmeriCorps members in different ways in the impact work we're doing. And so a couple of things to be on the lookout this year. So first, as some of you know, we have AmeriCorps members that have served with the Recovery Acceleration Fund here in Louisiana, and we expect that there's going to continue to be opportunity to nest AmeriCorps within the RAF program. So there's that's kind of, consistent with what we've done last year. Where there's kind of this frontier that Helen and Tessa and Mike and others have been eyeing is an opportunity to bring in effectively prepare AmeriCorps members to help further integrate preparedness thinking, intervention, tactics into our constant and continual communication with SBP homeowners. And so this is something that's being developed, and that I believe with Mike and Ian and others, we're going to seek to recruit, effectively prepare AmeriCorps members and nest them within SBP operating sites so that we can deliver in a consistent way preparedness resources, so that while the build team is out there getting the house to a resilient, steady place, we are also informing homeowners and individuals like how it is that they should think about preparedness, so that we're getting that kind of resilient home, resilient community, as Zach and Liz pointed to, as it relates to our strategic plan. So that isn't the limit of what we can do with AmeriCorps, but I hope it invites individuals to continue to think about not only the value of our AmeriCorps members in the AmeriCorps program, but where else within SBP these members could be of value add, and there's kind of space for that growth and innovation. So a couple of things to look out for. With that, Reese, I think you're on to talk about fellows.
Thank you, Thomas, and love your comment about Steve. I'm not saying that Steve is Clark Kent, but I've never seen him and Superman in the same place either. So thrilled for that growth and expansion. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Fellows program, and I'd start by, there's no reaction emoji for taking a bow, but the development team really should take one. Holy cow. I don't think we got to connect before the tail end of the last year. But as 2023 came to a close, the development team raised enough funding to hire fellows for 12 additional communities in 2024. And that's, as we stand right now, we've got active asks that are headed out to some funders that would look at this on a national level, expansion to all 10 FEMA regions, possibly all 50 states, so that we could get more fellows on the ground, like I mentioned before, to look at different types of perils, different types of infrastructure, resilience and mitigation projects, from bridges and culverts to housing and community centers. We want to explore as widely as we can. And thanks to the development team's fundraising prowess at the end of the year, we're ready to move on fellows in Alabama, California, Georgia, Florida, Massachusetts, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and West Virginia. So expect to see growth in fellows hired in those states at different levels of government, some at a local municipal level, some at a county level, some at the state level. Liz, is that a high five or a question? Neither, just a hand. Or sorry. So excited to get fellows on the ground in those communities. The funding has come from a combination, some anonymous folks, some from Walmart, some from Liberty Mutual, some from Toyota. And I'm just so thrilled with how the development team's been out there hustling about the potential impact of fellows. Thrilled with how Sherry and Hannah have really put pen to paper on where we ought to be thinking about placing fellows and run down important local community connections to make sure that the places we're selecting, we're going to have appropriate buy-in from local community leaders. We are poised for significant growth here. And what I want to remind folks is that the fellows will not only help those local communities access real resources that drive real projects and help citizens in those communities, it's also going to serve as a network of nodes by which SBP will have a much clearer and robust understanding of what resilience and mitigation activities are most effective at the local level than any organization in the country, because we will have resources placed directly at so many different municipal and county and state levels, observing so many different types and numbers of projects. So I'm so excited about what we're poised for now with the addition of 10 fellows or 12 fellows by mid-year. But I'm also convinced that with just a couple of the right asks, we could double that number, and we could be responsible for anywhere between 30 and 50 fellows, moving quickly on this time-limited opportunity to capitalize on federal investment. So stay tuned for more. Look forward for ways you all, especially those of you who are in support function roles, communications, HR, finance, will need a lot of support in order to pull growth of this scale and geographic expansion off successfully. But slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And 2024 is going to be a really big year. Thanks for an opportunity to share a little bit more about it. And thanks to all of you who've worked so hard to make this moment a reality.
Fantastic. Thank you, Reese. So in closing, I want to go through shout outs and I'll kick us off. I want to shout out Adrian Lee, our warehouse manager in New Orleans, who, after a member's car was stolen a couple of weeks ago, has been going above and beyond in helping pick up that member from home, drop that member off at the office, and take him home as well. So just thank you, Adrian, above and beyond. Really appreciate it. So please feel free to use the chats or just go ahead and shout out your person. Would love to hear some great shout outs. Everybody wait like 3 more seconds and then of silence, and then everybody do their shout out at the exact same time. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
I'd like to welcome Katie to the New Orleans team. She's our new volunteer manager and already just doing some awesome things and creating a great team. And I'd like to shout out Madeline and the Puerto Rico team. They are just coming together and making things happen there. And lastly, to our Houston crew, we have an event coming up and there's a lot of collaboration. So appreciate you guys.
I want to shout out Leanne in Houston for definitely handling challenging member issues. I want to shout out Megan and the whole AmeriCorps team, but especially Megan for building policies that ultimately supported Leanne and supported our team in dealing with those member issues. And then on a separate note, want to shout out Mike for leadership as we are dealing with unusual challenges in the AmeriCorps world with site sunsetting and coming up with the client preparedness role for AmeriCorps and other things that we have in the works for AmeriCorps as well.
I want to shout out JR, Joe, Sherry, Hannah, Maria, Josh, the Advise team, who very nimbly and quickly modified the standard leader practitioner course format, which we hold in Savannah. We invite lots of folks to attend. They altered that quickly with about 2 weeks notice, and we provided it in Volusia County last week, where we reached not one grantee, but 4 or 5 different counties were able to attend. I think Steve made terrific progress on RAF potential in Sarasota County. I know that Joe collected a bunch of important business relationships that'll drive additional advise and influence opportunities for us. So I want to shout that team out for their nimbleness and flexibility.
Morning, everybody. This is Joe Russo. If we haven't met, I'm the technical consultant that Kyle and team were working with here over the last couple of months. And I just wanted to thank everybody for bearing with me in some of these changes, specifically Brittany and Kristen on some of the more technical pieces have been an absolute wonder to work with, but I owe them a couple cups of coffee for the bumps and hurdles along the way. But thanks to everyone's support, we've saved SPB, I think, around $40,000 so far in annual technology costs. And that's in part thanks to Kyle for his leadership and bringing me to the table and helping work things out. So kudos to everybody, but thanks to those three folks more specifically. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Joe.
I want to give a shout out to the whole dev team and specifically IG, but very specifically to Brianna. Brianna's taken on a huge amount of responsibility as we lead into this year in both a really robust 2023 analysis with the data we were able to capture last year and putting together some really thoughtful takeaways as we lead into 2024 that wouldn't necessarily have been a responsibility of hers in a different model, but I'm deeply impressed by the way she's really led and taken on ownership, and I think we'll be really well positioned this year. So Brianna, thank you.
I want to shout out Veronica, who is an uncelebrated, very important cog in the SVP machine, especially during this time when we have kind of shifting roles and a missing leader in the finance department with Nicole out. And she's just been killing it. And I want to make sure everybody celebrates her.
I actually have another one. Kristen, thank you. You triggered my memory of a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, me and Kristen and Anya were on the phone with some folks from Florida's Division of Emergency Management. And we went through some slides we had prepared for them. And then they sort of asked a question, and I, on the spot with no notice, asked Kristen if she'd run through some slides on analysis she had done around racial equity and FEMA awards in Florida. And let me tell you something, folks, it's some of the most powerful charts you've ever seen. And I watched state administrators wriggle around in their chair with discomfort at what Kristen was showing them while they wrestled with how they might be able to share that important information with other people. And so I was in a moment humbled by how much work Kristen had done, thankful that she was prepared to talk about it right off the top of her head, and deeply impressed with how hearable that information was to our partners in Florida. As Kristen, I called you the next day to tell you as much, and I think we missed each other, but I was just so impressed and thankful to be your colleague that Friday. And I want to say so everyone could hear it.
Thank you.
13 days until Nicole is back. I'm not keeping track or anything, but in the interim, I'd like to shout out Ethan on the finance team, just like running right into this thing, supporting the AmeriCorps team with the recompete application, and then just like answering all my one-off finance questions over the last few weeks. Truly appreciate it. I'd also like to shout out Megan, our Deputy Director of AmeriCorps, with some of the tech stuff and Okta going away, just like digging in with program managers and rewriting our policies to ensure that onboarding and exiting members can be as smooth as possible.
I wanted to shout out the DAP team and the AmeriCorps members. We've had our ups and downs the past year, but through proper planning and brainstorming, we've come up with more innovative ways to reach every client, making sure that we ensure that no one falls between the cracks. And they've been working very hard and diligently on trying to whip out as many appeals as possible. So again, thank you team for your continued hard work.
All right. Well, I think that might be it for now. But if anybody thinks of a shout out, please go ahead and send it via email. I want to thank everybody for your attention today, participating, attendance. Have a great rest of your day and looking forward to our next all staff call. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.